almost from the very, very beginning of this whole Brexit saga, the Brexiteers never even mentioned Northern Ireland, or about the border, or about the Good Friday Agreement. To them, it was just something that was going to happen in the back of their heads. It was all going to be fine. It would be like a t-shirt a t-shirt being ironed. The iron goes over it and the crease just goes straight out of it. Not a problem. However, turns out the Irish border is the biggest sticking point in this whole Brexit saga. Now, you have an entire population of Northern Ireland who overwhelmingly voted to remain in the European Union, and yet no one is listening to their voices. You know, this is the thing about where you say, oh, you've got to listen to the 17.4 million who voted to leave. Why? You know, just because a side lost a vote doesn't mean that we're not allowed to go on making the argument, which is what I've been doing for the past, 3 years at this point. And today we have another example that Johnson's plan for the Irish border is going to be absolutely unworkable. So compromise is always involves discomfort. In a typical negotiation, both sides can arrive at a compromise on an understanding that, for each of them, the benefits of doing so outweigh the cost. It is the political and economic fragility of Northern Ireland that has made the compromise between the UK and the EU in the withdrawal agreement necessary in the first place. Yet, under Boris Johnson's proposal for the Irish border, the discomfort caused by the compromise would be borne almost exclusively by this small region. And this current stand has plans that include a British government more willing to compromise Northern Ireland than it is to compromise over Brexit. What Johnson has offered the European Commission is unexpected. Instead of a choice between a hard border on the Irish Sea or one across the island of Ireland, Northern Ireland shall have both. The rub is that Johnson is handing the responsibility for the decision now to the EU, as if the effects of such borders, either with a deal or with no deal, will be primarily Ireland's problem, and not one for the UK. His proposals persist that with the illusion that Britain can have a cost-free Brexit, now enabled by putting the burden of of managing the consequences on the island of Ireland. This is clear from the two main dimensions of these proposals. First, regulatory alignment. Although Johnson claims that these proposals remove the so-called backstop, the most substantive part of it endures, and with bells on. Northern Ireland would effectively remain part of the EU single market for all goods. The critical difference between this and the backstop, however, is that it is not conditional. Northern Ireland shall be in a different regulatory zone to Britain, regardless of the type of the EU-UK relationship. This means, this is meant to be devised miraculously quickly by the end of the transition period. Second, the greatest and most immediate difficulty comes in the ratcheting up of the status of the Irish border into a customs border. Theresa May promised the no return to the borders of the past on the island of Ireland. One border of the past that maybe people may remember heavily and vividly was a customs border. They remember the paperwork, the inconvenience, the delays, the targeting of customs officers. What they remember less is how the economy was transformed when the benefits of being part of the EU's customs union would be married with the benefits of peace. It is all too easy for that to be reversed. The hard border or the Brexit, the more severe the impact of the customs borders will be. What Johnson proposes will not protect Northern Ireland from these effects. It will in fact exacerbate them. The problem with the post-Brexit Irish border has always been managing the conundrum of avoiding making it a hard border which would disrupt the conditions for peace under the Good Friday Agreement, while running it effectively. Any customs border worth its salt needs to be managed well, and you will have to assure protective partners of trade deals that negotiations are worth their while because you don't have leaky borders. You will also need to assure local traders that their domestic market is protected against both smuggling and shoddy cheap imports, because the border is effective. If the Irish border is not run well, especially if the UK is determined on a hard Brexit, then smuggling not only becomes easier, it becomes more lucrative. The customs procedures outlined in the UK government proposals are not extraordinary, but neither are they convincing means of border management. This is not unique context. In fact, what Johnson is putting forward as to mitigate the measures are pretty familiar at this stage, having been broadly outlined as long ago as August 2017 in the UK government's white papers on customs on Northern Ireland. They have worked elsewhere when they are used to help facilitate the movement of goods across a hard border. If there is no hard border and no effective means of catching illegal operations, then the value and the practicality of such measures dramatically decreases. Alternative arrangements, the backstop, could in theory work for a customs border, but these would need to be carefully designed to develop over time, with the input from those effective and supported by proper resources. And at this stage, therefore, these arrangements can offer little more than a legal uncertainty for the EU and the worrying disruption for cross-border traders. In his letter to John Juncker, Johnson presents these proposals as, quote, a far from a final demand, and the basis for rapid negotiations towards a solution. A proposal that would avoid costs to Britain while placing Northern Ireland's future as collateral cannot be the last word to be allowed on this matter. And there you go. Boris Johnson, surprisingly, not surprisingly at all, he's basically going to throw the Northern Ireland and the DUP under the bus. Now, it's funny that the DUP are supporting this arrangement when, as every key measurement here outlined, will dramatically destroy the Northern Irish economy. And yet the DUP, will support this. Well, whether they will support it or not, I suppose it's still open in the air. At the moment, we don't know. But yeah, Johnson's Brexit plan, not going to work. The EU have already come out and said, no. And we're only, 3 weeks away now? 2 weeks, is it? Yeah, 2 weeks away. No solution at all from these people who said it would be the easiest thing in history. And remember, guys, the guy who was saying all this stuff, how easy it would be, is now in charge. So you've got no excuse that Brexit isn't working now that you haven't got Theresa May to blame. The guy who's in charge of saying all this stuff, of filling you with lies and, telling that, unique porky pie joke, is now in charge. So there's no excuse for Brexit now. It has and always will be completely flawed from the ground up.